Well, hey, Mark, it's great to have you. Welcome to That Will Never Work. I'm looking forward to our discussion. What I've kind of learned is the best way to do this is basically to let you kick things off by just taking me a quick journey of who you are and what you're working on.
Alrighty. Well, I am a flood adjuster, an insurance claims adjuster. I'm a freelancer, so when there are big storms out there, I get hired to go out there and help write up the estimates. So a number of years ago, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a major flood just outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We call it the Great Flood of 2016. I think down here in Louisiana, we get a great flood every 5 to 10 years. So that was the latest one. But what I noticed is one of the things that I have to do is not only go in and inspect the home and write up the estimate for the home, but I also have to document or help the insured document all the contents that were lost in their house. So if they've got 2-3 inches of water or more in their house, they've got hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of damaged contents. And the way it's currently being done in the industry, and the most popular way to do it, is to hand the insured a specially formatted Excel spreadsheet and tell them, hey, go ahead and fill this out with all your damaged items, and to also share a folder with them on a file sharing program like Dropbox. Well, for a lot of folks who've just lost everything that they had, this becomes a very cumbersome, trying, emotional thing to go through all of their items one by one and then have to face technology. The average homeowner is 50 years old, 54 years old. So everybody, I look at everybody on the other side, 54 and up, as the other side of technology, or the back side of technology. As I'm sure you know, they didn't grow up with cell phones, they didn't grow up with computer games, they didn't grow up with a laptop, smartphones. So doing things, working with programs that they're not familiar with, especially like a spreadsheet. You mention a spreadsheet to somebody, their head goes, explodes. You mention Dropbox and they try to figure it out. So what I found is a lot of people were leaving a lot of money on the table, money that was rightfully owed to them by the insurance company, but they had to be able to prove that they had the items. So the last 2 years I started working on a phone app called Contents Buddy. And what it does is it allows the insured, the policyholder, the person who flooded out or had damage to their house, to document all of those damaged items on their cell phone with just a couple of clicks of the button. It's a lot easier to use. There's no file sharing, there's no Excel spreadsheets, and fortunate for me, unfortunately for some of the folks I worked with, about 2 years ago they flooded, and I used the old Dropbox and spreadsheet method, and it took them 10 days to 3 weeks or so to put together their contents list. About a year ago, when I had the Contents Buddy phone app and website ready to roll out, I beta tested it on them, and they were all able to finish their contents up in like 3 to 7 days, so a lot faster. And by finishing up faster, that means I can close the claim faster, which means they get paid faster, and of course, since I'm a freelancer, I get paid faster too. So I found that I was onto something with the Contents Buddy phone app. Unfortunately, I got so far into it from a developmental standpoint, I'm not developing it myself, I got so far into it financially that I really couldn't stop. I mean, I could have called it quits, but I would have just left what was a good program that would help a lot of people on the table because I didn't have the finances to finish it up. So I sold off some farm equipment and took that money and finished up the phone app and debuted it. But I realized that I had to come up with other avenues of revenue for it. How could I repurpose this phone app, this Contents Buddy inventory app, to make it work for people? And that's when I started to split off and come up with different ideas on how to use it in different ways. The one idea I have now is I currently have, when they fill out their spreadsheet, when they fill out their contents list on the phone, as the administrator, owner of the website, I now have access to all of their contents list. And it's basic list. It's basically sofa, $800, 3 years old, and maybe a model and serial number or something if it's a TV or a washing machine. And I also have pictures of it. So now I know I have some data, and what I've been trying to do over the last 6 months or so is figure out a way to use that data and monetize it. And the idea I came up with is a thing called Shopping Buddy, which we're currently getting a patent on right now. And Shopping Buddy will take that list, and it'll take those pictures, it'll run them through a special search engine that we're developing, and then it'll go to predetermined online retailers and shop for items of like kind and quality. And then it will return a list back to the insured, so it makes it a lot easier for them to find items in their price range by having that kind of customized search engine, and it sends them back links to all the items on their list from multiple vendors so they can shop around. The problem I'm having at this point is, how do I get those big online retailers like Wayfair, Best Buy, Bed Bath & Beyond, Furniture and More, Build.com, IKEA, Home Depot, Lowe's, how do I get those guys to open the doors to somebody they've never heard of to work with? Because now I've got, on average, 15,000 customers a year who file a flood contents claim that have about $24,000 a year to spend, for a total of, on average, the National Flood Insurance Program pays out $340 some odd million a year on average. So I've got qualified customers, at least I think I do. How do I get those guys to open a door to a schmuck like me?
You want to know what leapt out at me about that?
What?
Sold off some farm equipment?
Yeah, I had a tractor.
What a backhoe?
No, it was a John Deere with a front end loader and a box blade. I mean, we can get into details here if you're into that, but you do what you got to do.
Oh, no, I totally get it. It's just always, all these things lead into interesting directions. Another thing for people who are listening right now, which you may have picked up, is that Marc does have this quintessential TV and radio voice, and it's because for many years he was a weatherman. And he'll let me know right before we began taping that he may have to drop off the call because there's a tornado warning might come through. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, he has to don his cape and rush back to the studio and coach people through. But I think, no, it was more like he had to flee to his own storm shelter.
Right.
But we're going to take this call, and every minute's going to count, right?
Good. And I'm not a weatherman anymore. I'm not a weatherman anymore.
Yeah. Let's talk about Content Buddy and Shopping Buddy and the relationship between the two. So one piece that you glossed over is, did Content Buddy ever get commercialized? Did you begin using it? Did customers begin using it? Did it become a means for people to actually submit their claims using the Content Buddy?
Yes, I've had a couple of beta testers last storm season. For us, generally speaking, this program was designed around flood victims, as opposed to people who got some hail damage to their houses. Unlike Texas the last couple of days that have got pounded by big, giant, butterball turkey-sized hail. This is mostly designed for people who work flood and for people whose homes have flooded.
But it hasn't yet been. It's been a few people have taken the one that you kind of have put together and tried it.
I've had a couple of dozen adjusters.
It hasn't been rolled out by any other adjusters.
Right. No, actually, I've had a couple of adjusters use it in the field. Nobody has paid for it yet. I kind of looked at it as a glorified beta testing last year. Last storm season, hurricane season, while it was very, very big and we had a record number of storms, we didn't have a lot of flooding. So I didn't get the full test that I wanted to, but I'm fully geared up and have a lot of excitement from different companies that want to use it this year. So I think this year will be my good year, or a good starting year.
The reason I ask is that you're already layering on the monetization component before you actually have the traction with the underlying product.
Right.
And that's a little unusual. And
well,
was there a reason for that?
Well, I saw that there was, I'm sitting here looking at this data last year or year before, and I'm like, how could I use this data? Once I realized I would probably, what the market could bear for my for the product, it was not going to, it would take me forever to recoup my investment, to pay for the programmers and everything that I have in there. So I was looking for different ways, and I'm like, one of the most difficult things for me as an adjuster is when people send a contents list in, I have to go, if it's a questionable price, I have to search the internet and look for items of what we call like, kind, and quality, or LKQ. So I was spending a lot of time doing that. Then I realized, if I'm going ahead and shopping for these people, Why couldn't I develop a special search ad that would not only help me do my job and find comparable items, but they could also use it to shop? So it's kind of like it's like an all-in-one development. It works for me as an adjuster to approve the prices of what they're claiming, and it works for the insured for them to do some shopping for it.
Okay, so let's try and address your specific question, and I'm going to do it in my usual way, which is not address it directly.
Okay.
But I'll promise I will get back to it. And I do have quite a bit of experience trying to convince very large, established, conservative companies to do business with totally young, unproven ones. And I'll tell that story in a moment, too. But I will answer it extremely quickly. In the obvious way to get the attention of the Lowe's and the IKEAs and all the other names you rattled off is by dangling money in front of them, which is, I don't mean by paying them, but by literally saying, if you say yes, I will unleash a flood of people. But right now, there is no flood of people for you to unleash. All there is the promise of a flood of people.
I don't even know if it's a promise
very,
as
very
much as its
thing.
potential. Yeah, I don't know if it's promise as much as its potential.
Oh, that's even weaker then.
Yeah.
So not only is it the promise, it's the maybe. So I will, like I promised, come back at the end and talk about some ways to do that, because occasionally you're in that position. But the path of much less resistance is to have a flood of people. And there's a couple of gaps that you've got to jump over to get there. The first one is you have to demonstrate that a lot of people are going to use this app to settle claims. And I believe, and we're talking about trying to convince someone else. So the first hurdle is, no, if you were able to say, no, I have 7,000 adjusters throughout the country who are currently using this, and they're processing each one claim a week, and here's the volume that's currently being processed using this app. That takes away all the questions about, is this a legitimate source of content? And you believe it, and you have a few people who have tried it in the field, your beta testers, who believe it. But I think that it wouldn't hurt you to do it. It certainly is not going to cost you a lot more to get to that point, because to get to the next one, to get to the monetization piece, you have to do that anyway. That would be one way to convince them, is say, I don't yet have the monetization piece. Okay. Once you were able to say, look, I have people using this, I've worked out the bugs. All kinds of people are now using this to capture data about what they've lost with make, model, serial number. Look how powerful that is. I think it's fairly, I'm going to use the word trivial, so pardon me, to basically plug it into a single e-commerce vendor, which would solve the problem of quickly automating your ability to understand what the price points are, what the values are. But also, it would then create real revenue flow, which you could then demonstrate to other people. And of course, the obvious answer to this is Amazon. Amazon already has a program. In fact, you do not need to go bang on their door and say, please let me send people to buy things from you. They have a very well-established program of links for cash. They have a system where it's largely automated, your ability to set those things up. You could set this up with Amazon pretty quickly, and Amazon sells essentially everything that's in somebody's house. So that's the second hurdle to jump over, is say, not only can I get high volume of people using this app to begin recording all the items in their home they've lost. That's jump one. Now jump two is, and I've demonstrated that when I make this easy, they'll then begin clicking on these links to buy the items. And that will create some small flow to you, but it will allow you to walk into a Lowe's, a whoever, IKEA, and have some real numbers to whet their appetite with. So again, I promise I'll get back to the one, but I am listening to this and saying, I think you're way ahead of yourself, that you're worried about monetizing something which is not ready to get monetized yet. What will happen is you will go to all this effort, you'll spend months, if not quarters, convincing a big retailer to work with you. You'll negotiate the terms. You'll work with their API, and then no one will show up. And that's a tragic thing. Whereas you have to start at my opinion, at the customer end. And what you're doing is, I think, an extremely interesting idea, which is one of the reasons I was so keen to talk to you. And a lot of people, and believe me, I've heard a lot of these, have the idea of, wouldn't it be cool if I could walk up with my phone, take a picture of something, and then instantly find out where to buy it and how much it costs. And lo and behold, those services do exist. And if you were playing in that game, we'd have a very different message. What you've done, which is so clever, is said, I have an entree that allows me to connect with people who are almost immediately going to want to spend $20,000 on something. And I've done that because I'm building a very specialized tool, and I have this huge crew of people who, to make their jobs easier, will introduce me to those people. That is a very, very powerful thing. And I would strongly encourage you to exploit that. I would really to begin demonstrating there is traction here, that you have built this tool which is so compelling for claims adjusters that they beat a path to your door to use it. And it becomes so compellingly easy and powerful for the people who have been impacted by a disaster that they rush to do it. Because if you solve those two, I guarantee the monetizing it, putting yourself into the flow of those transactions is trivial. Seriously, you'll especially if you do it by saying at the very beginning, I'm adding in this little feature, which basically automatically ties me into Amazon. And it does it not because I care about you buying through Amazon, although secretly it'll be fantastic, but because it makes the adjuster's job easier, because it automatically, I don't need to sit there and go through and, like you said, do all the research. Amazon does it. And basically you say, you, of course, can go in for yourself, but I think I can probably convince most insurance companies to accept the Amazon price as being legitimate replacement value, or the new value, which I can then discount accordingly, however you do those sort of things. So in other words, I'm steering you away from answering your original question, which is saying I would be all in on figuring out how to take that step of getting real people to use this. And it's fine if it's still beta, but see if you can really get some volume going. See if you can build this thing in. But anyway, I promised you that I would tell you about the ways to convince people to work with you when you don't have any of those things, when you have to play that game of saying, imagine if you will, rather than, my God, I'm drowning in orders and I'm giving them all to Amazon. But short of that. So and I'll shut up in a minute and let you, and we can go down paths that you may want to go down other than this one. But the analog for me is that when we launched Netflix in 1998, it was a DVD by mail business. I don't know whether you actually remember that piece of it. And we were launching it at this crazy time when there weren't very many DVD players out there. And so we had this chicken and egg problem of how do we sell to DVD owners when there aren't any? And I realized that the only way to do this was to actually reach people right at the very moment that they had bought a DVD player, when they were the most excited. Similarly to your way of, you figured out a way to reach people right at the very moment they need to buy stuff. And I had to go to the Sonys and the Panasonics and the Sharps and the Toshibas and convince them to put a coupon in their box. And if you think it's hard selling to IKEA or convincing IKEA and et cetera, to do it, you haven't met the Japanese and Korean consumer electronics companies. But the answer is you have to make sure you understand exactly what their motivation is, and really understanding what's in it for them and what would then incent you to want to have them spend the time and take this risk on working something out with you. Well, that was interesting. So mid-conversation, it came true that a tornado did approach. Marc lost his internet, and he is now hunkered down in some undisclosed location. So I certainly wish him the best, and I'll report back that he did okay once I find that out. But, I think we actually covered a lot here. Marc did want me to go into how to convince people to take a bet on you, but the best way to do that is to avoid having to. And certainly the best way to convince large retailers, to convince conservative organizations to bet on your unfounded startup is to already be delivering the very thing that you can promise you'll deliver. Which is why I was recommending to Marc that he go back to the beginning, that he go back and focus on ensuring he has an app which is so compelling that insurance adjusters want to take it into the field, that it's so compelling that their customers will use it to log all of their losses. And the thing he will have to watch out for is it a one-and-done thing? And initially when I heard about what Marc's idea was, I was concerned about that. This would be something that someone who had a disaster used once and never used again. But what got me excited was to realize it's not really an end-user tool. It's a tool for the insurance adjuster. And this is a problem that they face every single day. And when you can find a product which someone has a real need for, where using your product will save them time and money, where using your product could potentially in the future create a tremendous stream of revenue for you, well, then you may have stumbled onto a winner. Well, we'll check back with Marc later, make sure he got through this okay, and certainly found out how he did with Contents Buddy and the soon-to-be-announced Shopping Buddy. Thanks a lot, everybody. Back with you again shortly.